globally as a speaker, retreat facilitator, medium, and mentor. My mission is to awaken and realign you back to your magnificence, your power, and infinite potential. As the founder of the Rise with Love philosophy, I'm honored to share wisdom that will create the expansion of joy, abundance, love, and freedom to flow into your life. If you're ready, I want to hear you say yes, because the most wonderful things will unfold for you when you embark on the journey to rise with love. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to a brand new episode. Thank you for being part of the collective consciousness that is rising with love. I have a very special guest today whose mission is to change the way we think about what we do so together we can create a magnificent world for everyone, the planet and the creatures under our care. It is my greatest pleasure to introduce you to best-selling author and motivational speaker Nicola Grace from the Nicola Grace, the Mission Mentor, and the Mastery Academy. Nicola, I am so glad the universe brought us together. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us and share in your wisdom and your passion with us.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, Kiwi on Kiwi in different parts of the world. I absolutely love it.
I do. I absolutely love how, in some ways, I had someone say, the internet is like the universe. It connects us all. We're all interconnected. So I'm so glad that you can share this time. And you have the most incredible journey that led you to the work that you do. And I'd love for you to share the outlook that you had as a child, and then you were faced with something in your life and you had to apply this outlook. And so I'd love for you to start us off there.
Okay, wow. That sounds actually intriguing. I would like to know that myself. So picking up from when I was a child, how far do you want me to go back? I think the earliest memory I have of connecting to this concept of having a mission or something to do or being part of a team of people on the planet that were going to contribute to creating a world that was more equitable and that was fair for everybody. I was 7 or 8, maybe a little bit younger, and I would play this game in my head where I would have all, the Tonka toys. I know you might be a bit too young for that, but we had these little Tonka toys where they were cars and vans and VWs and fire trucks. And I would get them all in a row and play this game with myself where I would have a convoy of them going to this beautiful meadow in New Zealand, as it happens, when the butterflies were in harmony and everybody was living off the land and we were all happy in harmony together. And in my head, the idea was that we're all getting together to create a new earth or to create a new way of living that was harmonious and we had peace on earth. It was my idea of utopia. And that's been with me forever. So when I was told that I had leukemia in my late 20s, I was living outside of New Zealand at the time. And there was this voice inside of me said, but hang on a second, I haven't done what I came here to do yet. I don't want to die. And it was that voice that saved me, because I feel that if you have something inside of you with a will that strong, you have to find a way to beat whatever adversity that you are going through. And that linked with the vision I had of I have this idea, I'm supposed to be here with a group of people making the world better. And I haven't done that yet. So, this isn't the end for me.
Oh my gosh. You don't think someone in their late 20s would even have leukemia? How does that even happen? And the fact that you had this voice inside yourself that goes, I'm not done yet, I have more to do. And I absolutely love that, when you were such a young child, you had this understanding of, this world that we are probably creating right now in the 5D ascension that we're in.
Yep.
Right,
Exactly.
which I'm so excited about, right? And what I'd love to ask, because I know a lot of people choose to heal themselves holistically and things like that. What is the challenge that comes with wanting to go down that pathway, because that's not the go-to way of doing things in the world, right? So what would you say to someone who wants to do it in this manner?
Yeah, look, it was a very different time for me because it was in the early 90s and there was no cure, like the chemotherapy drugs and the, traditional methods and what have you. They were telling you the best you could do is 5 years. And with me, they just said, well, there isn't anything we can do. It's too late. So I was faced with no choice. And today people are faced with a lot of choice because we're in a very, very different world. And if you want to take an alternative position, it is my absolutely fundamental, very, very strongly held belief that your decision on how you heal is between you and your maker. Right? So that would be the first place to go. It's like you make that decision there. And when you feel so strong and you're congruent with that, then you surround yourself by people that support your decision and you just make the best decision that you can. That is my belief. That's what I hold very strongly. So for me, it was really easy because I had no choice. It was even easier because everybody I knew was into natural therapies and very supportive, and I had that community around me. I didn't have a community of people who were 100% sold on the philosophy of the medical profession. And I call it a philosophy because that's what it is. So, yeah, how's that sitting?
I love that. I think, wow, that's such a profound way of actually explaining it. You need to sit with this decision with your maker. And I think that is probably the most, I don't even know how to put that into words. I'm still like processing that actually. It's like the most beautiful piece of advice you can give somebody, because often I think, I don't know, I haven't personally lived this situation, so I don't know. Though I deal with people on the other side as a medium who, of course, battled with all sorts of things, right? A lot of, some people chose to go the holistic way. I don't call it natural because to me it's holistic, right? And, that worked for them. It didn't work for others. Some people decided to go down the medical route. That worked for them, didn't work for others, And actually, sometimes that decision gets made for us. So I love that you say, the best piece of advice I can give you is you need to sit with you and your maker. And, can that be done like via meditation? Like, how did you do that?
Well, I already had that connection because I had been teaching A Course in Miracles. I was a teacher student of A Course in Miracles. I'd been on a personal journey. My mum's an ordained Buddhist. So I had a lot of spiritual influences with me. So that was already established. So it was a form of meditation. It was like just sitting and getting quiet and allowing my fear mind to just quieten down and wait to hear what it had to say. And it was just so obvious. And recently my brother was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is the cancer that my grandmother died of. And we went through this whole situation on the flip side of it because he went down the traditional route. And I knew he was going to come through because he'd sat with his maker. Like he'd sat down and gone, I feel so strongly that this is my path and I'm going to do this. And I feel very confident about it. And he pulled through and he did really well with that treatment. And I think you nailed it when you said, some people do natural therapies, it doesn't work, and others do and it does. And others go do traditional therapies and they work, and then for others they don't. And I think I believe, because it's my experience, that the factor that is unequivocal, it doesn't matter which therapy path you choose, is that relationship that you have with your maker, your will to live, and it is just not your time to go, right? And those are the things that are out of the hands of any practitioner, right? Doctors, naturopaths, that's out of their hands. Right? If it's your time to go, it's your time to go. If it's not your time to go, there will be a way that your practitioners will be able to help you through that so you get to stay around a lot longer.
Oh my gosh. It is like music to my ears, what you are saying. So thank you so much for putting it in such a way that we can relate. And it's like everything. There's no one size fits all method, right? And I love that you have such a open-minded family by the sounds of it. And actually, I really want to know about the 7 years you spent in an ashram, and you became a student yourself and teacher of the Course in Miracles. So what is that like?
Yeah, that was some of the best years of my life, although my best years are yet to come. It was in Wisconsin at a place called Endeavor Academy. So strictly speaking, they didn't call it an ashram. It was a community of students and teachers of Course in Miracles, and they trained you in miracle healing, and you undergo your own personal transformation under the tutelage of the master teacher, who's no longer with us. And every day we would have light sessions and hear readings from the course, from the master teacher and from other teachers. And then there was a community where we did service and were very instrumental in instigating a lot of really good service projects, like helping people in prisons overcome addiction, people in the community, as well as people in our own community come into their own awakening. And I think like the the one thing that I've taken away from that experience is, I mean, many things, but the one thing that I've taken away from it that's still with me very, very strongly is that it opened me up to what love really was. Away from romantic love, away from family love, but it's like, that's what love is. And I would get glimpses of those experiences, and I opened up into those, had many awakenings, facilitated awakenings in other people. And ultimately, it just came down to love. It just came down to, we're all just one big ball of love. When you just chink away at all of the armor, there is nothing but love. And that, I think, has fundamentally changed me to my core and remains the thing that really defines me, I think.
I really believe that. I believe we are all love. And that's why I call this philosophy the Rise with Love philosophy. And I haven't personally ever lived in a community like that, but I'm really drawn to want to go to India and do that. So I must have been, in a past life, an Indian of some sort. I've been told I work with Al Moira a lot. So what I would love for you to share is, because in our communication with each other, you said you could have a conversation with anyone that has, walked the planet, it would be Jesus. So please tell us why, because I love what you shared with me about this.
Well, I just want to know how he did it.
Don't we all?
Like, how'd you do it, man? How did you heal? How did you raise the sick from the, was it the sick from the dead or the dead from the whatever that saying is? He had the power to reflect the truth of who we are, as powerful beings. Then we can just throw away sickness like that and get up and walk, or, drop the leprosy or whatever, however the story goes. So somewhere in there, he went through a training program. And if you read the books about the lost years of Jesus, apparently he was under the tutelage of the Essenes, and they taught him metaphysics and all sorts of things. Yeah, I would just want to know that. Like, how did you do that? Because that would be something, I think it's something that gets lost in a lot of modern day Christianity because of religion. And that's that fundamental teaching that you look into the eyes of a master teacher who is in the core reality of oneness and love, and everything else melts away, and you become that experience, or you come into that experience. I think that teaching gets lost in modern day religion. So I think I'd want to go back to that and just go, let's talk more about that, because that's not written about much.
No, it's not. I kind of always imagined Jesus as a psychic surgeon. To me, my understanding of it, I don't predominantly work with healing. That's not my area of expertise, but you called him like a quantum healer. So is that different from like psychic surgery?
Yeah.
Can you explain that for me, just so I understand it?
Yeah, look, psychic surgery, from what I understand, so I've met John of God and I have had psychic surgery from other surgeons. It very much feels like they are doing something to you and then you're healed. In quantum healing, you're being reminded that you are the healer. And all you need to do is come into a certain alignment, vibration and thought and belief. And when all of the stars align, so to speak, in that regard, you're actually healing yourself.
I actually have like goosebumps all over my body when you say that. And I have like tears wanting to just stream down my face. I don't know if I'm like releasing something as you said that. I was like, wow, so different though, isn't it? One is someone healing you per se, whereas one is you are healing yourself.
Yeah, somebody's there facilitating you, remembering that you heal yourself.
Absolutely incredible. Often, with Jesus now, he's an ascended master, and we often see him carrying like little lambs and things like that in the pictures that are depicted of him. And he is often talked about that he looks after all the inhabitants of the planet. And I know that you're very dedicated to ensure that we take care of the creatures under our care. What do you see that we can do as individuals and the collective consciousness that is rising with love to assist on this mission?
To take care of the creatures?
Yeah.
Wow, that is a really, really good question. Because we have such a strong tradition today of seeing animals as disposable commodities that I don't want to get into judgment about good, bad, right, wrong, or ugly. But I think that where we need to start is recognizing the true relationship as human beings that we have with the planet and with the animals, which is we are their caretakers. That's the bottom line, is we are their caretakers.
Yeah. I think what we kind of maybe adapt, and I might be speaking on, from just what I see and from what I know, is we kind of look at ourselves as individual and go, well, what can I do? I'm just one person, or I'll just buy this toothpaste, even though I know that potentially it's, killed a forest and animals within it. But do you know what I mean? Do you know what I'm trying to say? It's like we kind of maybe turn a blind eye to what is really going on because we're just one person. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I had this really amazing vision in 2012 when I had done about 1,000 life purpose readings for people, and I had started to see ripple effects of what would happen if they actually monetized their purpose and started making money through a business or a job or some kind of enterprise that was in alignment with their purpose, that even though they were doing this little bit or this big bit, didn't matter whether it was little or big, the ripple effect of that goes out, and then it creates ripples, and then it creates ripples, and then it creates ripples. And then I went, if everybody just steps into their purpose and does their bit that they feel called to, the ripple effect of that is a massive movement of change. Now, since 2012, we have had that massive movement. It's called social entrepreneurship, right? Especially millennials. We go into business to solve problems in the world, and we make it out, and we're solving social issues. We're solving planetary issues, and we're doing it in a business context. So that ripple effect has created a movement. And now we just do the next one. We all do our little bit about becoming more conscious about animals and how we treat animals and what role they play in our life. And we do our little bit, and then that ripples out, and everybody does their little bit, and it ripples out. So you don't have to think about your contribution all the time as doing something really huge, making a big impact, because you make a big impact just with the bit that you do and allowing the ripple effect to join other people's ripple effects to create a movement. And that essentially is how movements throughout the whole of history have been created. A few people creating little ripples that turned into big waves that turned into a huge movement.
Oh my gosh. I feel like, are we like related or something? Like this is
at
the
some
kind
level,
of, yeah, I'm like, well, we're all interconnected. I get that.
Yeah.
But it's like, this is the kind of stuff I talk about all the time. And it's like mirroring what I say to people. And I'm like, you're like the stone being cast into the water, and the ripples will happen. And sometimes you won't see where the ripples go, because at some point, they kind of get so big that you don't see them anymore, right? So I love that you say, focus on what you can do as an individual and know that it's creating ripples, whether you realize that or not. And I love that you assist people in finding their purpose so that they can do their part in transforming humanity, which is my language. I love this stuff. So why do you believe people don't know what their purpose is?
Well, we're not taught to think that way. Like the neurokinetic pathways in our brain are wired and trained to stay wired to the concept of getting an education, going out and getting a job to make money to pay bills. We're not trained from a very early age to think about what our contribution is to the world, how we would like to contribute, how we would like to show up, who we would like to be in the world. That isn't how our brain is trained to function. So when you start feeling that calling from within you, there's something else I'm here to do. I'm here to contribute something. I feel like I've got more to do. I sense a purpose and a mission. When those sort of things happen internally, you're going to need to deprogram. You're literally going to need to drop the neural kinetic pathways and establish new ones to allow the realization of what your role is in this moment to shine forward. Because what happens, and I see this all the time with people I work with, I can reflect back to them and say, this is what you've come into the planet to do. I feel this, I feel that. And they'll be crying and they'll be resonating, and then we go, oh my goodness, you're reading me. I feel like you're walking on my soul and you're just reading my soul. That's really amazing. And then towards the end of the session, they'll go, I don't think that's my purpose. Totally ignoring the fact that they had a soulful connection with the truth. And the reason why they do that is because the mind kicks in. It goes, I don't know how to do that. I don't think anybody's going to pay me for that. Who actually will hire me for that? Oh, can you really do that? I don't know if that's possible. Like the monkey mind turns up and it goes into overdrive. And you listen to that more than the soul's calling. So there needs to be a process of letting go of all of the conditioning and the way the neurokinetic pathways are wired, and then allow the soul's calling to rewire you to go, well, if I'm being called to do this somewhere along the line, I must have the ability. And if I don't know how, there's an entire industry out there that can show me how, Auntie Google, Uncle YouTube, how to do this, and there will be a video, and there might even be a course that you can do to pay for it. And if there isn't anything out there, it's probably your job to be the pioneer to figure it out and then teach others.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I want to ask you, this just kind of popped into my mind because of the way that you explained it. Why do you think that we are taught to do this whole, get good grades, go and study to have a job? And why are we not taught to follow what is inside ourselves? Like what unique gifts and talents we came here to enhance the planet with? Why do you think we've kind of gone that way?
Yeah. Well, that's a really good question. And it's like, how far down the rabbit hole do you want to go? Because
I know
now you're talking about how society has been structured by a global elite that needs to control to have things work for them and not work for everybody else, starting from the very beginning of monarchies and even in feudal societies, there was usually always a ruler that controlled, and it has to do with control. It's like we've got a system that works for us, and so we need to control everybody else to think that they need to behave this way so that they can be part of that system, and we'll give them a few rewards, and we've got to keep the status quo. I mean, that's the system. We're not given the liberty at school to cooperate with each other, right? You get told off if you share your answers with the person sitting next to you, which is the value that we're moving into, is cooperation. So we're not trained in that. And we're not trained to be free and to think freely, because the teacher needs to be the authority, and the only way they know how to be the authority is to be right, even if they're wrong, right?
I get that. It is such an interesting question. And, with the 5D ascension, do you think that potentially this programming in terms of the control and all of that, do you think that's going to come crashing down? Because that's the vibe that I get. It's going to come crashing.
It is crashing. It is crashing down. I mean, you're seeing it in the American elections at the moment, especially with the Democratic primaries, and now we're going into the presidential election. You're seeing the battle between two factions on the same side of supporting the global elite, right? It's just two different sides. And they're both vying and fighting for power. They're not fighting for you and me. So you're seeing it playing out there. You're seeing it playing out in China, with a lot of dissidents. You're seeing it play out actually with the dissidents in Saudi Arabia, and the women, the very brave women that stood up and said, you know what, we're going to start driving whether you make it legal or not. Brave change makers and pioneers around the world in all sorts of areas, different backgrounds, different religions, different schools of thinking are pushing the boundaries on that and saying, no, that my reality is that I am free. And so therefore you need to organize yourself around that concept rather than trying to organize me around a concept that I'm owned and controlled and I owe you something.
Every part of me is like, yes. Yeah,
well, that's what we're heading to. That is what we're heading to. And we're just seeing the battle. Like we're seeing it, it's like fight to the death. It's gladiators right now, right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, while the gladiators are over there doing their thing, we'll keep them over there annexed in their sandbox. The lovers of humanity and animals and the social entrepreneurs and the healers and the inspiring people, the visionaries, we're all over here creating a new world. And you just go over there and you stay in your sandbox and you fight it out to the death, right? Where that's okay if you kill each other, right? But in any given moment, if you want to come over to here, we've got great food, tastes good, full of nutrition, got good kombucha. We've got it all going on over here. Welcome to come, but you got to leave that shit over there. It's not welcome where we're going.
I love that. And I think so many more people are going to find themselves having to let go of that paradigm, letting go of the paradigm of this world of control that we have been, made to live in, which isn't our reality. Because I think you and I probably understand that the reality is truly within us and we can project it out. And I love it. This wasn't what I expected us to talk about, but it was just like, oh, let's talk about this for a minute. I felt inspired from spirit.
the many positive things that are showing up with this COVID lockdown globally, whether you like it or not, moan, be art, whatever, and whatever you think the cause of it is. The one thing that it has highlighted is the way our world is structured, the way our economy is structured is not sustainable. It doesn't work, right? It doesn't work to have cheap manufacturing done in one country, because if that country gets wiped out, look what happened to the economy worldwide. That is not a sustainable system. Right? It's not a sustainable system to do crap like that. So I think you're going to see quite a lot of decentralization of lots of different tasks, not just manufacturing, because of COVID. And I think that'll be a good thing, because that's going to give birth to a lot of new industry in countries if they're smart about it.
Yeah. Here's to exciting change. Even if we don't know what it's quite going to look like, let's be really excited for what is being birthed right now from this opportunity. And I want to talk a little bit about the work that you do as a motivational speaker. You're a best-selling author. Who are your mentors, and what's a gem you can share with us that was your aha moment from them?
Gosh, I have a lot of mentors. I've got a lot of mentors that I haven't paid to mentor me. I've just followed them. And then I've got mentors that I have paid to mentor me through the building of my business. But I would say the very first one wasn't the very first mentor, but certainly the very first one that made a fundamental shift in the way I view things was Shirley MacLaine. I started my life out dancing. It was my passion. And she was a dancer. She was an actress and still is an actress. She started writing books about her awakening experiences, and she was in a spa speaking with her best friend in Machu Picchu or something like that in the book. And he said to her, to get to the fruit of the tree, you must go out on a limb. And in any given moment where I kind of feel like I'm not being rewarded, or I don't feel like I'm experiencing the fruits of the tree, that is the thing that has mentored me through everything. It's like, okay, so where do I need to go and get out on a limb?
Yeah, that's amazing. It's incredible to think no matter what we do, that's usually just a vehicle to what we're here to share and experience. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I was doing a workshop today saying that very thing. It's like our purpose and how we show up in our work in the world or our business, whatever it is that we're doing, is the vehicle for our awakening, because it is always pointing us towards, whether it's a challenge or not, it's always pointing us towards that we are creating our own reality. And ultimately, we're here to wake up and realize we're not victims of the world we see. We are its creators. So how about getting together and creating a whole lot more consciously?
I love that. The collective consciousness, right? Is so powerful. And would you maybe believe or understand or agree that when we do the work on ourselves, it also helps the collective?
Definitely. Definitely, yeah. Because a number of reasons. Deep within us, below the surface of our conscious mind, we have the subconscious mind. Then we have the unconscious, what's going on, and we're just completely 100% not conscious about. That governs, all of what our body does and our secret fears and shame and all that kind of thing. And then we've got the collective consciousness within us as well. So everybody has that. We all have the collective within us, just sitting there on the surface of the unconscious mind. So whenever you're doing deep inner work and you're coming into your own freedom of thinking for yourself and having inspired thoughts and allowing your spirit to inspire your thinking, you're removing a little bit of energy from the collective, and you're also increasing its vibration. So you're raising the bottom. And when I look, this is what I said in my first book, it's like the world we see outside of ourselves is an inward picturing of our collective consciousness at its lowest common denominator. So the lowest we are in the world is what the world is going to be. So way back when, we believed that women, for example, who did natural therapies and could heal people were witches, and we burnt them at the stake. The lowest common denominator is that women who did that sort of thing were evil, and men that were involved in that sort of thing were evil because they got burned at the stake too. So when we raised the bottom and more of us started unplugging from that thinking, that became an abhorrent idea. And so that's what's happening now. We're unplugging from the structure, which is really what the many movements have been change precursors for this. We're unplugging from the structure that, do we have to have a working class, a middle class, and an upper class? I mean, isn't it time, well and truly, for class to be over? Why does an executive get paid this amount and somebody who is doing this amount doesn't get paid much at all? In fact, they don't get paid enough to pay their bills. Those are the things that we're unplugging from at the moment so that we can create more of an egalitarian world. We can't do that unless we actually start unplugging our thinking from the status quo. That will cause ripples, and that will cause a paradigm shift. And then when the paradigm shift happens, all of a sudden the social programs will come in, and then the political programs will come in, and the next thing you know, it becomes mainstream. And that's how all movements have created change in the world, through going through that process.
The way I explain it a little bit, I don't know if this would make sense. It's kind of like the French Revolution. Being French myself, that was my history. It's like when the people came and, ransacked the castle and caught Marie Antoinette and, guillotined her head, and then the people ruled rather than the monarchy, right? So I kind of explain it in that way. Yeah. Right. And it's kind of like, that's probably where we're heading, just as a metaphor to kind of explain it. It's more about the people potentially, it's not that we need ruling, but it's like, it's more about the collective. Like you say, there won't be as much of a difference in terms of lack and abundance. It's going to be, shared around. And that's what I feel is going to be amazing to see happening in our lifetime.
Moving towards a gifted economy. I was once told, and I cannot remember the teacher that told me this. Actually, I do remember. It was John DeMartini. And he said, any area in your life that you are not trying to master or don't have mastery over, somebody else will be your master. So if you can't be bothered with money, and you're not mastering the basics of budgeting and saving and investing and being wise with your money and paying your debts and, not getting into debt in the first place, if you're not doing that, then there's going to be a control system over you. And it's the same with relationships. If you're not controlling your relationships, you'll be in a relationship where somebody's controlling you, or your parents are. There's always a control factor until you are autonomous within your own self. And so if we want a world where we don't have oppressive governments, it's up to each individual to master themselves.
I have a tattoo from the two last sentences of Invictus, which is, I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. And Oprah came to New Zealand in 2015, and she shared her story. And that was one of the things she shared, was these two lines from Invictus. And I was like, oh my gosh, which is just so amazing to me. And I love that you say that. Until you master, someone else would be your master. And I'm like, wow, what an interesting way to look at that. Which I don't know if I'd necessarily looked at it in that sense, where, you're right. If we're not mastering our money, there will be someone else who is mastering it for us. And that might not be how we want to actually be functioning with our money. But
when somebody is taking care of something for you, you are at the mercy of what happens to them. And I see this particularly with women, kind of like just resting on the laurels of the man taking care of them. And then the next thing you know, he dies, he gets sick. They don't know how to take care of the finances because they've never touched them before or dealt with them before. The largest class of homeless people around the world, in the Western world, are divorced women in their 50s who got run over during their divorce settlement.
I would not be surprised by that.
And they can't fend for themselves. And I've met a couple of women that were like that. I could not believe it. It's like, man, that is an interesting social phenomenon. So, we're at a time in the world where it really is all hands on deck. Everybody is needed to be working towards self-mastery, to be working on their purpose, to help us turn this around. It's not for us to just, be taken care of by somebody, whether it's being taken care of by the government, by a partner. And that includes people who consider themselves to be handicapped and they can't do anything. And I just thought, you have to look at that guy, Nick. Who's the guy, Nick? He's got no arms and no legs, and he's a motivational speaker. And he travels around the world. I mean, don't you tell me you can't do anything because you're handicapped. Look what he's done. He's inspiring so many young people. No excuses, right?
Well, even Stephen Hawking, who was told he was going to die, and oh my gosh, is like the genius, of our lifetime.
Yeah, there is genius, and people who end up having some kind of a challenge like that. There's genius in that. There's genius in the thing that has happened to you that the world so desperately needs. So don't just sit there, waiting for everybody to to take care of you. Just get out there and start inspiring, start sharing your genius.
Yeah, it's like waiting for someone else to figure it out, right? I know you work as a motivational speaker for people who are like, that sounds great, but I just don't have the motivation to master. What could be like something that you could say to them that would make them maybe want to start to begin the mastery of themselves?
Yeah, exactly. Look, if people don't have the motivation, there could be a number of things happening. First of all, their health, right? Their endocrine system, their adrenals might be fatigued. And so you need to pay attention to health and fitness, first and foremost. Secondly, you might also have some blocks and self-esteem issues. So that's blocking you, because like life is supposed to be lived passionately, and we are all passionate beings. All of us, very passionate beings. So if you're not in touch with that, and you're not in touch with the passion that motivates you to want to do something, then something's blocking that. Something's blocking your natural flow of who you are. And like, I have had this happen to me. So I'm not saying, you've just got to get out there and be this ball buster in life, because sometimes you go through periods where you're not motivated, but you kind of are motivated because all you really want to do is rest. And that just might be what you need to do at that moment, right? That's a very important thing to do in our journey, is sometimes to just step back and not have a goal and just be goalless and wanderless and just let whatever's, healing within us to do that. So I'm not saying that you've got to go out there and be rah, rah, rah and put a lot of effort and energy into it. But certainly life is about passion, and it's about expressing passion and sharing it and living passionately. So do whatever you can to remove the blocks that are in the way of what's inside you naturally, right? You've got something sitting on that. And usually it's a self-esteem thing. What's the use? Why should I bother? I'm only going to get knocked down. Nobody loves me. I'm not good enough. Like all of these lies that society has told you, and they're just lies. Somewhere along the line, you've believed it's become this really heavy weight, and so you're carrying it around. Well, you can just throw that off. You can literally just throw that off and go, I'm not going to accept that anymore.
Yeah. And what a wonderful thing to be able to say is actually that is not the reality. It is not. You are not useless. You are, if we are all love, fundamentally, we all come from source energy as love, then how can we be anything other than this beautiful perfection? Within perfection, there's imperfections as well, right? And I love how you say that life is about passion, because I always say to people, I'm French and we're very passionate people, and I'm like, well, maybe that's why I was put on this earth as a French person, because we are. I just feel like, I'm so expressive with my hands. That's how I talk passionately.
Your body when you talk, yeah.
And, like when I meet people, I'm like, I need them in my space. French people, we kiss everybody. Men kiss, men on the cheeks. And that's just how we are, right? And I always say I'm two extremes. I'm passionate, in a loving way, but also don't mess with me, because that passion goes wild as well. So I love that you say that. And Master Jesus himself, because I know that's someone that you would want to talk to, is the master of joy at the moment in the second ray, which is where he's working at. And so that's what life is supposed to be about, is that beautiful passion that you say. So I want to know as well, because your motto is, when you hear your calling, you're meant to answer. And I know that some people are going, oh, I like that, but I don't know what that even feels like, or what is a calling. So can you explain that for us?
Yeah. How I've experienced it and how I see it experienced in the people that I work with is it starts with thoughts and ideas in your head. And then it can be a gut thing. Sometimes it can be in your bonnet and you just got to do something. And it's really something that's calling you forward to take action on something. And it will start when you're restless, when you're bored, when you're feeling frustrated about what you're doing. That is a calling. You said it before, we're meant to be joyful. We're here to have joy and experience joy. So if you're not experiencing joy, you have been called out of what you're doing. And you're ignoring it, right? Because you think you have to do it because you need the money to pay your bills. And that might be a reality, but you want to respond to the calling by saying, I hear you, now show me the way. It's like, I hear you don't want to be doing this anymore. But given I'm living in this construct that requires me to make money, pay bills and pay taxes, why don't you show me what you want to do instead? And you have a talk to your soul. And I did that recently because I'd just been through a midlife crisis. It was a huge awakening experience, but very uncomfortable. I kept hearing this thing inside me, oh, I don't want to do that anymore. And it was like, it was literally it. I mean, there's something inside of me just going, oh, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm bored. Don't want to do that anymore. And at first I thought, oh, that's self-sabotage because I had a very highly successful business. Then when I finally started listening into it and tuning into it, and I'm going, okay, go ahead. I hear you. You don't want to do this anymore, but guess what? Here's the reality. And this is what needs to happen. You need to show me what you want to do instead. And it took a while before I could hear the answer. And, it'd take you a while. And sometimes you get it immediately. But sometimes it can take a while in reality. And so I just kept listening and listening and listening. It's like, well, I'm hearing all the things I don't want to do. So what do I want to do? So I would start writing down, if I could have another life, what would it be? Oh, I want to be a pop star. If I could have another life, what would it be? Oh, I want to be a real estate agent. Like, write down all of the alternative lives that you want to have, what you would do with your money, how you would be, how it would look. And then you see the common denominator that goes through each and every one of those lives, you will see your purpose. So I did that recently. Well, what do I want to do? Which has caused me to pivot in my business and teach in a very different way. So I still have all my programs that I've been doing, but I'm pivoting to teach in a very different way. And now I'm excited and now I'm juiced about what I'm doing.
Oh my gosh, I can so understand what you're saying, because I've been currently working in what I do for nearly 8 years. And I keep saying, like, it evolves. And I'm like, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to do it in this way. Yeah. And you do. And you're like, you feel it. And I feel like for people, they hear it, but it's like they just don't give it momentum. They're like, it's like that
they
feeling.
Stick with it.
Yeah. And I love how you say that. You can your tip of, okay, if I could be, like you said, the pop star, if I could be the real estate, like what's the common denominator in that? And I'm like, everybody after this podcast, go and do that. Like, go and sit with that tip and just do that. And see what happens, right? Oh my gosh. Yeah. And I love that. Also, previously, a little bit earlier on, you talked about, social enterprise and millennials and all of that kind of stuff. I want to know, because you help people make really good money doing their mission. But why is it that people think they can't make money doing spiritual work or doing work which doesn't even feel like work to them because it's just who they are? Like, why do we have that block?
Yeah. It's old software that goes back to the time when, because remember, 50% of what goes on in our brain, we've inherited from our ancestors as much as 50 generations back. So, and maybe more, who knows? But that's just what, brain scientists are telling us. So you go back to how things were when you had the shaman, the priest, or the head of the church, or the head of some kind of religious order, or the spiritual practice that you did. They were the ones that held the God force. And the rest of the workers just went out into the fields and they did their work, and they would come back and they would pay for the priest to live, or for the spiritual person to live. So they never had to worry about working for a living. It was actually considered dirty for them, which is part of the reason why, healers these days don't like marketing themselves, because they feel it's kind of dirty. It dirties up the work they're doing. That's old software. And it just you just need to reprogram it, because you're operating on old software. You can't operate in a world where each and every one of us are now being asked to individually become masters of our own destiny in every single area of our lives. The shamans don't get taken care of in the world anymore. Like, we don't go to our spiritual leader and just give them money for the sake of them just sitting in the middle of a field, meditating. That's not the way we structured society anymore. So you've got to upgrade your software.
You've taught me something. I find that really fascinating, because I didn't realize that we go that far back. 50 generations seems huge in terms of, I can't even think that would be like hundreds and hundreds of, or even maybe thousands of years ago.
It's hundreds of years ago. Yeah. Because these days, we consider, because things are speeding up, right? These days we consider a generation like within 10, 15, 20 years. But back in the day, a generation might have been 50 years, 100 years, or 200 years, right? That's a generation of thought. So it used to be bigger. I tracked it back with someone. Don't quote me on this, but this is just interesting thing to chew on. I tracked it back to the fall of the Roman Empire.
Wow.
So that our rainbow and our millennial generation don't have authority and respecting authority, because they were during the time of the fall of the Roman Empire. Whereas the older generations is like, oh, you can't do anything wrong. You've got to do everything right. And I mean, obviously you've got to obey the laws, but in terms of challenging the way society is structured and challenging the world, that belongs to the millennial generation. And that's why, because they don't have the programming of Roman rule.
Interesting. I'm a millennial. Did you know that? And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
is that why? I always thought I was just stubborn, I just thought that was just my stubbornness in a sense. But that's really interesting to realize that it can really go that far back. That's just, you're phenomenal. I'm so in awe of what you do and how you just put things. And I know that you also talk about how it's important for us as humanity to play a bigger game. And I know I understand that, but I'd love for you to explain why it's important for us to go bigger.
Yeah, and it goes back to something that you said before where you were doing something and you probably felt like you were on purpose and then you didn't want to do it anymore and you felt like there was something else you have to do. Purpose is something that evolves throughout our life and it unfolds in our life. So it evolves and unfolds. So you need to change it up. Every time it wants to evolve and unfold, you're shifting gear and you're shifting gear and you're shifting gear until, you get to that thing where you do the ultimate that you're here to do. And who knows what that is and how that's determined. So that is what keeps you young. That is what keeps you alive and impassioned about living. That is what gives you the ultimate experience of learning that you're the creator of your own reality. So if you're not doing that, if you're not stepping up at each time you're asked to step up and evolve and unfold the next level of your purpose, then you're missing out on the largest amount of joy, reward, and happiness that is possible living on planet Earth as a human being. Like you're living a substandard life, and somewhere you know it because you'll be feeling mildly depressed and you might not have acknowledged that, or you'll be very depressed.
Amen. There you are, so amazing. And I just feel like, oh my God, everyone who's going to listen to this is so blessed for everything you've shared with us. Where can people find you and work with you, Nicola? Because I know you're in Costa Rica, right? And I'm sure you have a lot of online programs and all of that kind of stuff.
So like the best thing to do actually is go to nicolagrace.com, and as you scroll down, guide on how to find your purpose and monetize it. I've got a guide on how to become your omnipotent self, which is coming from that deeper spiritual part of you as a creator. There's a program, there's some videos on there that teach you about purpose and how to put a purpose aligned business together. There's so many resources on there that you can just pick which ones most resonate with you and then sign up for the ones that you're interested in. And then there are courses on my website as well too, so you can check those out as well. But the homepage is pretty much the doorway to a number of free gifts that I have. So if you just go there, you'll find it all on that homepage.
And you're also an author, so people can also get, your books and all of that kind of stuff. So, oh my gosh, it's just been such an honor to meet you. I feel so blessed.
Thank you.
I feel such a connectedness. I know we understand we're all interconnected, but I feel such a connectedness with you that I can't even put into words. It's just so refreshing. It's been so mind-blowing. And I'm just like, every part of my body is like, oh my gosh, just so, I don't even know how to explain it. You could probably describe how I'm looking and feeling. And I'm just like, oh my God. Thank you so much.
You're resonating because you're hearing what you instinctively know, right? You're hearing it reflected back to you, and it feels good because it feels like you're at home, right? You go, yeah, this is my home. This is where I'm at home with these values, with this vision.
I really hope that utopia that you saw as a little girl is something that we all get to be a part of right now. I think, that voice inside of you, I feel like I'm going to cry, but that voice inside of you when you had the leukemia that said, I still have so much to do, I don't want to die, I feel is because you've got to see it. You can't just see it from spirit. You've actually got to physically see this utopia. So I'm so glad you're still here with us, and I just can't wait to see how it all unfolds. So, oh my gosh, Nicola, you are an absolute gem on earth. We're so blessed to have you as a perfect example of how we rise with love. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Beautiful. Thank you. I've enjoyed it. It's been great.
Oh, well, everybody, as we all rise with love, let's continue to take care of all the occupants of the planet and show up in a bigger way to truly create a beautiful legacy. Thank you for joining Nicola and myself. Until next time, everyone, peace, love, and blessings, Melissa.